Welcome back to TFT Central. Today we're going to talk you through the best settings for the MSI MEG 342C QD-OLED monitor. So we've got the screen at the moment in the factory default settings, so we're just going to open up the on-screen menu and we're going to go through each of the sections and change some of the settings to be optimal. So first up, we're going to go into the professional section and we're going to change the Pro mode away from the Eco setting. So that's the default. When you do so, you get a small pop-up on the screen that tells you that it's going to increase the power consumption. That's fine. We're going to want to move down to, for our purposes, the user mode for now. So we're going to set the screen up, first of all, in its wide gamut mode, its widest color space, and then I'll also talk you through how you could set it up for the sRGB mode if you want to use that as well. So let's select user. Low blue light mode we're going to leave turned off. Image enhancement we're going to leave turned off as well. And we're going to come to the image section, and this is where we're going to make the majority of the settings. So first of all, we're going to change the screen's brightness. So the default is quite high. I'll leave some options on the screen here now showing you some recommended levels for different luminance levels, but we're going to move this down to a setting of 34, which should return us a luminance of around 120 nits. So we selected 34 there. Contrast we're going to leave on the default of 70. Sharpness default 0. Color temperature, the normal mode is quite close to our D65 calibration white point, but we're going to tweak it slightly by moving to the customization mode. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bump each of these up to 100 to start with, because their default of 50 is actually too dark. So we're going to bump them each up to 100. You'll see that the color of the screen changes quite noticeably as you do so. So now we're at a starting point of 100. We're just going to lower the red channel by 3 notches down to 97. So we've got 97, 100, 100. And that should give you a white point very close to 6,500 Kelvin, which is our target. So that's the best balance we found. So we're going to leave that selected on customization. Note that in this menu, there's no option for any kind of gamma controls. Now the default gamma is pretty close to 2.2 anyway, so that's good. If you did want to make any adjustments, you'd need to use a calibration device of some sort, or you could, of course, try our calibrated ICC Profile that's available and linked in the description below. So we're going to leave screen size set on auto. We'll come back to the display HDR setting in a minute when we set up the screen for HDR mode. So that's the image section complete. We're just going to come back up to the top now to the GI menu. So auto brightness control, this would activate the ambient light sensor on the screen, which would automatically adjust your brightness depending on your room conditions. Now, that might be quite useful to some people. By all means, turn that on if you want. That will help control the screen's brightness depending on whether it's a bright room or a dark room or so on. We're going to leave that off for now because we set a specific brightness level a minute ago. The other settings control the RGB light feature, the sound tune feature, KVM, and then a couple of the gaming settings for smart crosshair and optic scope. Now you can turn those on, of course, and play around with them if you want for your gaming. For now, we're just going to leave those turned off. In the gaming menu, you can change the game mode to any of the presets for different use cases. We're just going to move that to the user mode for now. And then you've got other settings in there for things like night vision, refresh rate, whether you want a refresh rate counter on the screen. You can turn those on and off if you want, same with the alarm clock. We're going to turn adaptive sync on as well. That's going to be the preferred option for most people for gaming, so let's turn that on. And then if we come back out of the gaming menu, we've already done the professional section, the image section. Input source should be selected obviously on the input that you're using. It's probably best to have auto scan enabled in case you activate another device and you want it to scan for the input. That's fine. Picture in picture and picture by picture, you can change those if you want to handle multiple input sources. You can also set the navigation key so that there's quick access to different settings for the up, down, left and right directions. That's self-explanatory. In the settings section, there's not a massive amount we need to change. You can turn the light bar across the bottom edge of the screen on or off here using the spectrum bar option. Info on the screen will leave you with an on-screen display giving you some details about the configuration. We'll just leave that turned off. There is a couple of things that you might want to change here. So if you were using an HDMI 2.1 input from your PC, then you need to switch this mode over to the PC input instead of console. So console at the moment is obviously set to handle games consoles. HDMI CEC, we're going to turn that on. That's quite a useful feature. So if you turn on an external device that is connected by HDMI, then the screen will automatically switch over to that HDMI input. So we're going to leave that turned on. That's quite a handy feature. You can decide then whether you want devices connected via the USB-C port to be able to charge when the screen is off, where the power delivery on or off. And then the last section is the MSI OLED Care. So this is the panel protection features. So pixel shift you can't actually turn off on this screen altogether. So we're going to have to choose between the slow, normal or fast operation. We're going to set that to slow just because it minimizes the visual appearance of any kind of pixel shifting as best we can. So we'll turn that off. The panel protect feature, you can manually run the short or the long time cycles if you want. The static screen detection will detect whether there is a static image on the screen and move the screen into a dimmer appearance if it detects that. We're going to turn that on, and then we'll leave it starting on 50 seconds there and 120 seconds there. So that just will enable like a screensaver kind of dimming mode if the screen has detected a static use, which is quite handy. So we'll leave that turned on, and then it gives you a bit of information about the panel. So that's it for our wide gamut mode in SDR. We're going to set the screen up now for the sRGB emulation mode, which will give you a more accurate setup if you want to use it for sRGB content, SDR content, and you want that more accurate image. So the only setting really you need to change is you go into the professional menu and you change the Pro mode to sRGB. So that will activate the sRGB emulation. You'll see now that a lot of the settings in the image section are actually grayed out. The only one that you can really change now is the brightness. We'll leave some options on the screen now, but we're going to move this down to a setting of 34, which will give you a brightness of around 120 nits. Thankfully, the color temperature and the white point is pretty accurate in this mode, so although there's no access to change the color temperature setting, it's not bad out of the box, so that's fine. So you can use this mode, the sRGB mode, if you want to emulate the smaller color space, so if you want more accurate colors for sRGB content specifically. If you're not worried about that and you like the more vivid appearance for maybe gaming or movies or whatever, then you can just stick with the user preset mode. You may also want to use a calibrated ICC profile to run sRGB emulation via color-aware applications like Photoshop and so on. We'll leave a link in the description below to our calibrated settings and ICC profile that's available. So you can switch between those two modes quite quickly and easily if you want to. So that's the SDR configuration. Now we're going to set the screen up in HDR mode as well. So we've activated HDR in Windows and the screen has switched into its HDR mode, as you can see here. Quite a few of the settings are now unavailable. So within the gaming section, you can still change the game mode. We're going to leave that on user, that's fine. In the professional menu, the Pro mode, we're going to leave on user as well. A lot of the settings here now in the image section are grayed out, so you can't change brightness anymore. You can bump up the sharpness if you want for movies and HDR gaming. The main setting you want to change here is we want to move from the display HDR true black setting to the peak 1000 nits brightness setting. That will give you a brighter HDR image and activate the 1000 nits peak brightness capability. And that's pretty much the only setting that you can change in this menu. So there's not really anything else that you need to change for HDR at all. So all we've done is we've left the game mode and the professional mode on user, and then we've activated display HDR 1000. And that's it for HDR setup. If you found this video useful, please give us a quick like below and don't forget to subscribe for all kinds of updates on monitors and displays in the coming months. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.